What's going on, collective listeners? How you guys doing today? Hopefully you're ready for a new episode. We had an awesome episode today. Rob Rabena, he's the director of strength and conditioning at Ivy Rehab, but he also is in charge of their talent acquisition, hiring, as well as a professor. So wears many hats, and obviously had a lot of great insight to offer. It was a really, really fantastic conversation. A little bit of baseball talk in there at the end, but the bulk of the conversation is really built around the qualities that he's looking for when it comes to hiring individuals who are going to work in this sort of combo setting of having strength coaches working with physical therapists and athletic trainers. And obviously the facility that he's running and obviously what they're doing down there is fantastic. So hopefully you enjoy this episode and you try to dig a little bit deeper into how we can continue to try to, cohesively put together these aspects of, strength and conditioning, athletic training, sport coaching, all that stuff. And this one covers it all. So enjoy. All right, what's up, Rob Rabena? How you doing, man? How's everything going?
Anthony, doing good, doing good. Just Friday, so
Can't
gotta
beat
love
it.
Friday.
Can't beat it. Gotta love Friday. Any big weekend plans? Or you guys? Are you working on the weekends? Or you guys have all have off?
No, don't work weekends. Taking my kids out tonight to go like rock climbing, like indoor rock climbing. So
Nice. That
yeah,
sounds
trying to keep them busy.
That sounds fantastic. Well, I think all the strength coaches who are listening to this particular podcast are going to want to hear even more so now all about you and how you figured out a way to navigate the field so that you don't have to work weekends. And unfortunately I'm working. I'm doing well too. Like I'm not working weekends anymore, which is pretty sweet. So I can't beat it. So we're gonna go through. But yeah, typically what I like to do obviously is just give you the floor, give you a chance to obviously just kind of introduce yourself, tell your story. Right, you can start as far back as you'd like and just kind of let it
Yeah,
fly. And we'll get into obviously what you're doing now. So we'll introduce
perfect.
your little introduction and we'll let it roll.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. First of all, this is exciting. So I'll just share my story. I went to Cabrini College, which is like about like 40 minutes outside Philly. So I went there, studied exercise science. Did a bunch of internships I interned at Villanova at a commercial gym. So experienced collegiate strength and conditioning, experienced like personal training, group fitness, where I, did everything from wiping machines down, checking people in, making smoothies, like, doing all that like nitty gritty intern stuff, which was good.
Yeah.
Then I went to grad school, went to East Stroudsburg for grad school
Oh,
in
nice.
exercise science. So I studied, you know, really dove into baseball. So my research was on baseball, which was published in 2019, entitled "The Effects of Interval Training and Long Distance Running on Pitching Performance."
Nice.
Worked with the baseball and softball teams there as like a GA position.
Mm.
So really just like tried to dive into that sport as much as possible because that's what I wanted to do was work with, overhead athletes, baseball players.
Mm.
And then to complete my master's degree, I was lucky enough to get an internship with Cressy Performance. So I interned with Cressy in 2011, and that was awesome, awesome experience. Like really taught me a lot. Not about like just a lot, obviously a lot of like nitty gritty S&C stuff, but a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, a lot of the
Mm.
culture development, how to talk to people, a lot of that stuff that like really isn't taught.
Yeah.
Specifically if, in collegiate strength and conditioning, definitely not taught in school. So
Yeah.
it was really, really, really cool experience for me. Came back home. Actually, was like the first strength coach at Cabrini, where I started with like two teams. So I had like part time job there, part time job at an ice rink. Trying to get started. It's tough. It
Yeah.
wasn't easy, but you grinded. I had lucky enough, like had great support from my family to live out my dream of becoming a strength coach. And I grinded there for a year. Second semester had almost all the teams working with me. And Anthony, you'll love this. Like I was training groups of teams in like the fitness center, so there was no
Perfect.
athlete only weight room with 20 racks. Like
Sure.
so it made it work. Made it
Yeah.
work. Really taught me a lot of just like how to manage a room. And how to just like accommodate as many people as possible with the given equipment demands.
Mm.
Um, After that, I got essentially my like first full time job at Maple Zone Sports Institute, which is like a baseball academy. So I really wanted to kind of get back in baseball.
Mm.
So this allowed me the opportunity to be the director of performance in a 10,000 foot performance gym with an indoor baseball field, hitting cages, pitching stuff. So was really entrenched in like obviously baseball strength and conditioning, baseball development. And I worked at that job for 9 years. During my 9 years there, worked with all levels of the baseball athlete, all different types of athletes, but obviously a lot of baseball players
Mm.
from youth ages, so like 10, 11, 12, through high school, college, and professional baseball players, where, at one point we'd have 30 to 40 guys, pro baseball players in every day training,
Oh,
with myself and my team and all the development coaches around me.
nice.
So, yeah, so that was great. Worked there for about 9 years, and now I work at Ivy Rehab, which is a like strength and conditioning. The clinic that I'm in is like a strength and conditioning rehab combo facility.
Okay.
So, I'm working alongside of 4 physical therapists, where we're all sharing the same space, and helping people transition out of pain into training, exercise, fitness, and here I'm working with a large range of people, from people in their 70s. I'm working with athletes. I'm working with people that are there for ACL rehab, and then they're coming over and doing some upper body stuff with me, and we're really working on bridging the gap for those people
Yeah.
to have a good transition to return to play. And I'm also like teaching for Ivy Rehab, so I'm teaching a class. I'm also an adjunct professor at Cabrini, so it's cool to come like full circle there, where I was
Yeah.
a student there, I worked there, and now I'm a professor there.
Yeah.
Um, so I do that, and I also am a professor at Widener University for their third year DPT students.
Okay.
So I teach like physical therapy students as like a as essentially teach them strength and conditioning.
Sure.
A lot of the S&C principles, programming, assessment, and then coaching. So, I kind of do some teaching on the side. Real passionate about like helping students and mentoring students, and helping people get started in the field, and just set them on the right path to be successful.
Yeah.
Because we're all in this to help people, and that's why I enjoy what I do every day. I'm able to make an impact on those around me to be successful and reach their fitness and sport goals.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I think the teaching thing is such a crucial element, especially for coaches as they get older. Like I thought about doing that, recently, and obviously I was just like, okay, we're going down that path, and it's like, all right, are you going to get your PhD? You need your PhD to teach, kind of deal. And then, but yeah, I mean, you really set yourself up, because I think, teaching, it seems like teaching, and I mean, because obviously like coaching is teaching in some shit, way, shape, or form, right?
Right.
But like teaching in
It's
the,
the same. Right.
yeah, but teaching in the classroom I think is almost a different element. Like I did a couple like kind of like just
Guest
step-ins,
lectures.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. I had so much fun, and I'm sure it's not like
Right.
always like that, but in my mind I was like, oh, this is like a couple classes or whatever, and I'm like, man, the kids really
Yep.
liked it. We were like laughing, having a good time. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
but still having like
Mm-hmm.
some productive conversation around like
Yep.
some of the things that I thought were valuable. So yeah, I mean, I would love to hear your take. Well, first, I would love to hear your specific title at Ivy Rehab right now. What is your like official title?
So my title is director of strength and conditioning.
Okay.
We're in the process of like there's lots of clinics with Ivy Rehab all across. There's clinics in South Carolina, Jersey, New York, PA, Ohio,
Oh, okay.
and some of those clinics are set up and have space to offer fitness services. So
Okay.
one task that is part of my job is to hire and train good trainers and strength coaches to
Hmm.
plug into other clinics, so we can start to develop a model of rehab and training is the same thing in the same building.
Okay.
When you walk into this place, you don't know who's rehabbing, you don't know who's exercising,
Right.
and that's kind of our goal, my goal. In addition to obviously training the people in the clinic that I'm at, but it's also to like I want to set up other trainers in other clinics for them to do what I'm doing. So that way,
Sure.
I'm not only making an impact on the people that I'm training, but I can make an impact on you know helping trainers get jobs and make an impact on other people.
Sure.
So that's kind of my like, along with my teaching stuff that I do for Ivy, and then my training. So those
Yeah.
are my three like big responsibilities.
Okay.
And I guess my title is just director of strength and conditioning right now. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, you're a director of strength and conditioning, but you're also essentially tasked with talent identification, right, and talent acquisition in some way,
Correct.
shape, or form. And
Correct.
then, on top of that, obviously being a professor, which I think is super neat. So to go back to that before I get to my question about some of that talent acquisition, right? Like, I'm sure there's probably some people listening, including myself, right, who are like, yeah, what is what does the teaching route look like, right? Because I think it's like one thing to not only find it like really enjoyable, but it's also another thing that's like super beneficial for, it's like, all right, at some point the body may not be able to have the impact it wants to, like on the floor, right? And maybe I need
Yep.
to step into the classroom to reach. Obviously, it's like you're getting an hour and 15, hour and a half or whatever with young, impressionable, adults who are trying to figure out a way to get a better understanding of what's going on. And I think a lot of us can probably pinpoint a couple of professors that we're thankful of, and a lot of us can probably pinpoint a few professors that we really didn't, or maybe have learned some things and didn't learn some things from, or learned some things from that were like, okay, how does this
Mhm.
fit into the bigger scope? Obviously, it can be a little, um, I think it can be a little hectic when we don't really have like a full consensus on a lot of the qualities and things that we do with athletes here in America. So it's like we got these professors now teaching. It's like, well, where do we stand on certain things? How do we find that? So, I'd love for you to kind of just comment on those two things, right? Like the route of becoming a teacher and becoming a professor for strength coaches who are thinking about going that route. Maybe they just have their master's right now and they're thinking like, hey, I probably got to get my PhD to teach, because outside of that, it seems like adjunct might be the only thing. If you want to become like a full-time professor, you probably need to have a PhD. And then when it comes to how you go about approaching that curriculum in the classroom, right? And like actually trying to give and relate and articulate good quality information to young adults who are super impressionable and obviously very new to the field.
Yep. Yeah. No. Awesome. So how I got started and how I would recommend others get started. Obviously, I don't have a master's degree. Like I agree, Anthony. Like if you want to make this your full time job and you really enjoy and want to continue to do research and publish really good articles to make an impact, you have to get your PhD. That's not something that I wanted to do.
Mm,
Like I always wanted to like be a strength coach first and then be a teacher, second, right?
sure.
So that only requires a master's degree. And I my like goal when I was younger was like, hey, I want to work at a college and I want to teach at that college, so I can make an impact for all the student athletes, that I'm working with, but also all the students in the classroom. So I'm seeing them in the weight room, and I'm seeing them in the classroom. So
Mm,
obviously, most of my jobs have obviously been in the private sector. So I've had to guest lecture a lot, so I would drive to Stockton, a lot of my like, just guest lecture there. I would go to this university, that university, and would just offer to guest lecture
mm,
for free, just to get experience, so
sure.
I could practice and make sure I liked it, and you know, put it on the resume that hey, I've done guest lectures at universities. So that that's how I like got started, and would always reach out to the professors that I knew and say, hey, if there's any of these classes become available, I would love to
Mm,
help out in any way possible. And just put yourself out there. What's the worst they say? No. Then
right.
you're back where you are. So you don't know until you reach out, put yourself out there, because that professor could be looking to shift their specialties to something else. So you don't really know, especially at a smaller school,
Right.
what the department chair is looking for. So reach out,
Yeah.
and and I was, after my relationships and doing that for a couple of years, they reached out to me like, hey, would you be interested in teaching this class and that class? And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, you can make it your own, which was huge because that was one thing, like I wanted to teach people like what I knew and what my experiences were, and that's how I developed my classes, is to make them like the class that I teach at Cabrini is assessment and program design,
Sure.
which is what we do every day, right? So I'm teaching range of motion testing of hips, shoulders, functional movement screen, performance testing, general fitness testing, right? So we're teaching people how to test and assess somebody before you begin an exercise program,
Mm,
and it's all lab based. It's like, all right, let's go. We're gonna head to the lab. We're gonna hop on the table. We're gonna test some hip and shoulder range of motion. Like
sure.
we're practicing the skills of assessment, right?
Sure.
Not just learning about it, not just doing a lecture about it. So
Right.
I try to make it as hands on as possible because, as you know, that's what this field is. So that's like the gist of my classes is like, hey guys, like let's go into the gym, let's go into the lab, let's actually do stuff, and especially I'm working with seniors, they're graduating,
Right.
so they're entering the field or doing grad school in 3 months from now.
Yeah.
So I feel like my job is to prepare them for the field as much as possible.
Yeah, they're gonna be stepping into those internships, and they probably already have, right? A few of them.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, how many? Yeah, they probably start their internships in the sophomore or junior year kind of deal.
Yeah, junior, yep, junior, senior year, spring semester,
Okay.
fall semester, whatever it might
Yeah.
be. They have some experience, So yeah, it's just about putting the cap on that and helping them be prepared.
Yeah. Do you feel and this is kind of like a side question. Do you feel sort of like being a teacher is somewhat of a daunting task when you think of like all of the that's pretty reductionist thing to say, but like when it comes to just like all of the things that we struggle with and the shortcomings we have in this particular field, right? Like I know like when I say that, some people are like, oh, what do you mean? Like I think we could all agree like there are definitely some shortcuts, the things that need to get worked on, right? There's a reason that we have this podcast to try to solve some of those, right? If we can, or at least create some discussion around them, right? So do you feel a little overwhelmed at times with like there's almost like this responsibility you have to try to like I guess like I should preface with saying like I feel that sometimes whenever I'm communicating some sort of like piece of education that I want to impart on like a client I'm working with or anything like that, I feel this like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, well, like
Mm-hmm.
they don't need all of this information right now, but obviously like when you're super passionate about something and you want to, it's like I want you to know this, I want you to know this so badly because I think it's like, do you feel that is it overwhelming at times? Have you figured out a way to regulate that?
I wouldn't say overwhelming, but I just feel like a responsibility almost to give others what I know
Yeah,
because I feel like I have a unique experience to help others.
sure,
So
yeah,
that's really all I feel is just like, hey, I think I know some things about training, so I want to set up others on the right path to be successful.
yeah, yeah,
We all take bits and pieces from our experiences to develop you know what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So
yeah.
I feel like it's kind of almost my responsibility to help those around me to be successful.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. Yeah. And so kind of moving into now like that talent acquisition, right? Because I think for a lot of coaches might be interested, at least I was, right? When you talk about like, because you're in a unique position where it's like you're not only hiring somebody who's just going to be sort of like an assistant strength coach at some university, right? You're hiring somebody who needs to encompass like a wider range a wide range of qualities. So
Yes.
what does that look like, right? Because I bet somebody's wondering, well, I want to know, like, what kind of qualities do I need to at least obtain in order to try to achieve one of these positions in some way, shape, or form? And then I'll hold off on. I eventually want to get into like the overall structure and the dynamic of the place that you're working at because it seems pretty unique and it seems pretty progressive, obviously, in terms of like moving forward with new ways of thinking. But as far as just like figuring out who works well for the team, how do you make some decisions on that?
Great question. I these are the qualities that I'm looking for in somebody to be successful in this type of hybrid facility.
Hmm.
They need to be able to work with a large range of clientele. And what I mean by that is you got to work with 12-year-olds and you got to work with 60, 70 year olds. And maybe if you're, seeing some high level athletes, be able to work with high level athletes.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And that's hard to do, even that,
Yeah.
right? You have to be comfortable with training somebody who might be in pain
Right.
and or might have an injury, which again is not for everybody,
Right.
right? And I think you have to have excellent people and soft skills because you got to be able to talk to people and relate to everybody, not just your college athlete,
Right.
right? Got to be able to relate to Susie, who's 65, and then Tommy, who's 15 years old and wants to get bigger.
Why?
So
Yeah.
got to be able to relate to both of those people, which is hard.
It is difficult. I'm laughing because I feel like every single time I'm trying to describe, like I always go with the name Susie when I'm describing someone who's
Great
65.
name.
I don't know why. I'm always when because I feel like I give that specific example sometimes. I'm like, oh, like when we're doing this, like imagine you have Susie who's 65 and she's trying to swing a kettlebell,
Right.
and then you have like you said, like Tom. So
Right.
yeah. Anyway, sorry,
Right.
keep going. Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, the soft skills are important. And then obviously like before we get into like the logistics of the training model, but like got to be able to do assessments, because we're writing customized programs, so you have to have assessment skills to be able to assess range of motion,
Right.
movement quality, whatever assessment tools we're going to use.
Sure.
So that those are the types of skills that I'm looking for as a coach that can have tremendous soft skills is probably the number one skill that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Secondly is like got to be comfortable working with people in pain and injury, and got to be working with large range of people,
Right. Yeah.
and then got to be able to do assessments.
Yeah.
So those are the people that I'm looking for, and because I've been in the area for 10, 11 years, and I've had 2 to 3 interns every semester, and I've been teaching and I've been making an impact on those students, I have helped a lot of great coaches
Sure.
either become physical therapists, enter school, become strength coaches, become personal trainers, right? Go work for pro teams, whatever they wanted to do. I was along for that journey early on. So I have like a network of people in the area that like I have trained myself either in the classroom or in the gym.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I already know who are good trainers before they even come in for an interview.
Sure. Yeah. And so do you try to do a lot of sort of like in-person or not in-person, in-house hiring, right? Like someone who's obviously developed, come through the ranks. Obviously they've seen the system, right? They understand how you work, right? Is that typically, and I would assume that anybody who, and I'll let you kind of elaborate on that, but I'm assuming all of these qualities that you're talking about are things that these people possess, right? Like a lot of, because I was going to ask, I'm like, well, thinking to myself, well, he's worked with a lot of people who obviously gone on to work on, and I say like high level jobs. I don't mean that like high level versus like low level, meaning like, oh, like, if you made it to like the big leagues, so like you're working in the MLB, so like we all know like what I mean when I say that. I think it's just more so just high quality professionals, right, doing really good work wherever they're at. Excuse me, but I would assume that all of these people who you've obviously seen go through your ranks and then obviously go on to other places possess these same qualities, right? Some of the things that you're looking for in that talent acquisition.
That's correct, and
Okay.
that's where that's why it's important to run a really good and successful internship program.
Mm,
Like I spend some time with interns
yeah.
because I want to make my life easier down the road when there's a job opening at somewhere and either
Yeah.
I'm hiring or another trainer or therapist to reach out to me and say, "Hey Rob, I need a coach. Who do you have?"
Sure.
I can then give them someone right away on the spot
Right.
because students know that, I run a pretty successful and good internship program to help people be successful.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess the flip side of that, I'm starting to think is I do want to start, at least during the podcast, I want to start giving a little bit of like that alternative view to things, right? Because I think it's funny. Like I have a few friends who went through some interview processes, right? And there's, how it works in college football, right? There's always the wheels are always turning, right? So, and a couple of them went on some interviews, right? And they're like, some were really great. And then some they were like, I thought I could have done a little bit better here, whatever the case may be. It happens all the time, right? What are some of the shortcomings that you see in terms of some of the interviews that maybe you host or have held, and obviously you think, it could have been a little bit better here. Are there some commonalities? Is it always something different, right? Or but somebody, I guess, trying to get out ahead for some of the listeners of like, hey, if you're going to go on one of these interviews, here's some things that we could potentially avoid. Obviously, when you're dealing with and interviewing for someone who's looking for like a wide range of physical and psychological abilities.
Yeah, it's very hard to describe, Anthony, but I want someone that has really good feel.
Yeah.
And that I can have a conversation with.
Right.
And when we're having a conversation, they're not talking about themselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They're talking about how they can help others because again, that's a common theme that I keep bringing up because that's what we do.
Right.
So, that's what I'm looking for when I bring somebody in to say, hey, like, this is the space, blah, blah, blah. Do you think you can do this? How do you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I want to see them be confident, right? But I also want to see them have good feel and understand like what they're doing and how they're going to be doing it. And when they go meet the rest of the team, it's not awkward and
Sure.
It's an easy conversation because that's what you're going to be doing every single day.
Yeah.
As a therapist might have someone who's coming in for shoulder pain, but they want to work out. Well, let's go talk to our trainer and strength coach and see how we can integrate together.
Sure. Yeah.
And you have to have hi, I'm Rob. Nice to meet you conversation, right?
Yeah.
So if you can do that, you're going to be successful in this type of position.
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking about that too, actually, before we hopped on the podcast. I was trying to allot a percentage and just like designate a percentage of like how much of like the success you have with any client is based on like your personality versus the actual program that you're running. And it's funny because like I know that like I feel like everyone says it all the time now. It's like you have the best program, but if you don't know how to implement it and you don't have the the soft skills to be able to do it. So like I feel like that's good. Like it seems like something that's really taking on. Like people are starting to understand that it's not just about like the X's and O's. Obviously, you have to have these soft skills. But I was trying to designate a percentage. And I was like, is it 70% personality? Is it 30% skill? Is it like 80-20? You know what I mean? I'm sitting there thinking about, but I do think it's a large percentage because I wonder like how many like I've worked with certain clients where I'm just like, yeah, I mean like I don't think I'm doing anything like that crazy. And like from a technical perspective, I do some very simple things, but I think that they must be still sticking around, and we must be still working together because we have a connection, a dynamic connection, right? Like we've developed a relationship, and I think that that's kind of the interesting piece of it. So yeah, is that obvious? I'm assuming that that's something that you feel pretty strongly about as well, given the particular environment that you're going to be working in, right? Like creating an environment where these conversations can take place, and there's a little more openness and welcoming piece of sort of elements of that.
Absolutely. And potential clients or anybody, like, they're buying you.
Yeah.
That's what they're paying for.
Right.
There's a ton of trainers within a mile radius of me. What's separating myself from all the other trainers?
Sure.
Obviously the facility you're in, the location, the equipment play a little bit of a play, but what's the most important piece is they're buying you. They have to like you because they're going to be coming in to see you 2 or 3 times a week. So you kind of have to get people to like you in order to train with you.
Yeah.
And you have to when you're selling training, you need to know what they want.
Yeah.
So, I've been working in the private sector for a long time. Like, this is a great example. I had someone come in the other day. They're like, "Hey, I'm interested in training." They came in for therapy. I see you over there training. Like, the first thing they asked me was, "How much is your training cost?" Right now, do you think I told them how much my training costs, Anthony? No.
How much is your training worth?
That's not. I did not answer his question. Right.
Yeah.
And instead, what I said was, "Hi, George, tell me a little about yourself and what you're looking for and how I can help you."
Sure. Yeah.
And then he just starts talking. "Oh, well, I'm looking for this and that and this and that." And then I say, "Oh, I can definitely help with that. Would you like to get started with an assessment and evaluation?"
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's do that."
Yeah.
So, being able to do that and understand that and just get people to, like you and buy your services is obviously a really important skill. And you can't just be the meathead strength coach like, "Oh, I have great programs and, we do, conjugate programming." No one cares about that.
Right. Yeah.
No one cares about that.
Yeah.
So just let people know that you're there for them. That's what's most important.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I do have a question about some of the interviewing stuff, and this may be a little bit too deep of a conversation to go down, but I was wondering about like behavioral interviewing, right? Because obviously you have these qualities, like, and it might just be you, Rob. You step into these interviews and you're looking for the conversation, like you're just looking to have obviously a flow. You have a few things that you want to target for sure, but specifically when it comes to like the quality of wanting to help others, right? Because I think every person I interview on the podcast, right, they say the same thing. It's like, listen, like I want to have an impact on others, and I genuinely believe, like I really feel like we've had like some really really great people on this podcast, so I genuinely believe them when they say that. But then when you do like a little dissection, I feel like there's times where it's like, if you really think about what it means, like help someone else, it's like, all right, are we genuinely helping other people because of the fact that like we really really care about like their particular production, or is it like, is it sort of like this like selfish thing in a way where like we feel good about ourselves because of the fact that we're helping others, and like it just kind of like by default is a virtuous thing to do. I guess, like, how do you go about, like in your interviews, sort of like asking the right questions to kind of go down that path of understanding like, oh, this person legitimately cares about just having an impact on somebody else, right? Like how do you kind of like decipher between the two?
I love to ask this question, and I think this helps me answer your question, is tell me your vision. Where do you see yourself in a year from now? Where do you see your role in this company a year from now?
Yeah.
Right. And when you try to project a vision for somebody, they will really give you an answer of whether they're in this for the good or for the bad, and whether you think that they can be successful, because what you want is your visions to be aligned. You might not get there right away.
Sure.
Right? You might have different paths to get to the same vision.
Sure.
But at the end, we need to have a common goal in mind. We're all chasing the same thing. And if you're talking to somebody and you hear that, then that tells you that, hey, I can work with this somebody because we have the same goals in mind.
Sure. Yeah.
And whatever that goal is, depending on your setting, depending on where you're working or who you're working with,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's win a championship, conference championship, if you're in college or whatever, right? Just make sure everyone has the same goals in mind, and
Yeah.
your product, your service, your staff development is going to be pretty successful.
Yeah, and so now I'm kind of wondering because I guess like this, not to make this about me, but so like I think about that like pretty often. I'll think about like what is my vision, and I try to set out like yearly like objectives, right? So like I just started a new job and I'm coming up on a full year working here, so I'm like, I view my first year in any position as sort of like, well, I guess this is how I kind of want to ask this question, and I'll give like a little preface, and then I'll let you kind of take the reins. But it's like, all right, so what are some like good visions and good models for people who are just starting new positions or interviewing for new positions, right? Not necessarily to answer the question that you're going to ask correctly. That's not what this is about. The answer is like, for a lot of people who are like, well, what should my vision be, right? Like, what is my vision supposed to be? Like, what is my 5 to 10 year plan supposed to look like? Because I wrote it down once, right? And then it constantly changed, right? And then, I think your desires change, your goals change at times. It didn't constantly change, but there's a crossroads between like priorities and desires sometimes, I think. But I think like whenever I start something, I just dig my feet in and I'm like, I'm gonna be an intern for like a year. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna like settle in and really just like grasp this and understand this. But from there, right, it's like, you're getting to the point where you're like, oh, well, what am I? Where am I going? That kind of deal. So like, what do you think? Like, and if we can kind of devise like what maybe, I don't know, maybe like a 2 to 3 year vision, right? We'll start small, right? For like somebody who is embarking upon a new journey, a new challenge. If you were in that situation, Rob, like how do you approach it? Like mentally, as opposed to, I guess the word would be like, you have like these like specific sort of like objective
Yeah,
outcome based things, right? But more so like, how do we want to put together a vision based on like our behavioral goals, right? Like
right,
behavioral outcomes and things like
right,
that. Yeah. What does
right.
that look like for you?
I think that's just simple goal setting, you know, and that can be anything from like personal, professional,
Mm,
and you need to have short-term goals, long-term goals. Your short-term goals can almost be steps to get to your long-term goal,
mm,
right? So I like using that as like I want to get small wins so that I know that my path is being successful and I know my goals are being hit.
sure.
And that'll help you or me stay on track to reach your long-term goal. So you need to see small wins. That can be anything. Like, if we're talking professionally, it could be a numbers-based goal, X number of evals, clients, revenue, etc. Right? It could also be just like, hey, or social media goals, like let's put out X number of content this week, or like whatever goals you're looking for. All of those things are helping you reach your goal of, hey, I want to hire 4 trainers this year. Well, how
Mm,
do I hire 4 trainers? I need to make sure that, everything that I'm doing on a day to day basis is repeatable, because that's what we're going to hire, in the process, and the logistics and the operational stuff is going to follow.
sure.
So that's kind of how I look at that, is like, let's set up good short term goals for yourself,
Mm.
which will align with your long term goals.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great answer. I think like and which is tough to do, right? It's tough to look at small wins and like only focus on those small wins, because everybody's trying to think big picture. And I think it's funny when you come to the end of like maybe a 2 to 3 year plan, you kind of see how like everything that you mapped out in those 2 to 3 years, maybe it like did or didn't go exactly the way you planned, but you kind of like assess and you're like, you piece it together like, okay, it made sense as to why like this happened and that connected to this and that bridged off of this and kind of built into that. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic answer. I think it's good for anybody to have, because I do think the first time that I actually wrote them down, like legitimately wrote them down, because I think we all have in our minds like what we think our goals are and what our desires are.
Yeah.
But when you actually go to like say, like my brother was like, dude, go write out your priorities. Like literally just go sit down, pen and paper in your own room. Like just go do it. Like you might surprise yourself. You know what I mean? And I did, because I realized that my priorities and then what my goals were for my career, there was a crossroads there, right? I was like, okay, well the goal is like stay as close to my family as I possibly can, right? And then like, that was my priority, right? And my goal was to become like, Division I strength and conditioning coach. I was like, well,
Right.
there's some
Right.
confliction
It's
there,
hard.
a little bit of a
No doubt.
conundrum.
No doubt. No doubt.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, if you wanted to kind of comment on that, and if you want to, I'd love to give you a chance to obviously describe specifically some of the models that you're using at Ivy Rehab, and just sort of because I mean it's a fascinating concept. I know it's probably not like new, but I still think it's like super new considering like where everything else is in strength and conditioning right now. So and I love the idea of collaboration, cohesion amongst like all different disciplines. So I would love to hear like how you guys are going about approaching that, and just your thoughts on like what you're actually able to accomplish and how you're going about doing it.
Yeah, yeah. So essentially, our training model here, Anthony, is somebody comes in. If they're coming in to work with me, we will go through an initial assessment. The assessment will be about an hour. Now, this will change depending on the person, but it goes something like this. We'll sit down initially, 5 to 10 minutes, and just start to build rapport. That's where I talk less, listen more,
Mm,
gather some baseline information, right? Do some range of motion testing, do some functional movement screen testing. If they're an athlete, we'll do some performance testing. And then we get a mini workout session in where we'll look at some big patterns, your squats, your deadlifts, your lunges, your push ups, your rows,
mm.
right? And just see what they can do, see how they do it, look at their exercise technique. And then we sit down at the end and we recap and talk about it. And we go over your areas of strengths and weaknesses. And we decide on a plan because at the end of the day, like I'm just helping write the client their workout program.
Sure. Yeah.
So I want to make sure that they're on board with their workout program, or they're not going to get buy-in and you're not going to be successful.
Sure.
Um, After that, they would come in small group settings. Like the most people I can see per hour is about 10 people, just due to space. So we'll see anywhere from like 2 to 6 to 7, 8 people, an hour. They're all on customized workout programs. It's a variety of people,
Mm,
and myself, and I have another trainer who we kind of will roam the floor and coach everybody through their programs
sure.
at the same time, right? So everyone is getting like what they want, what they need, and they're training alongside other people. And we'll reassess after 4 weeks and write another program.
Sure.
So that's kind of like our training model is semi-private with an assessment and a customized workout program.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we do it,
Sure.
and people love it.
And so, are a lot of these people that are coming to you, like some of them come obviously with some limitation, restriction, or whatever the case may be. Some are probably like actually coming from off of an injury or whatever. Are some of these people just completely healthy though, and they just want to train?
I do see a mixture of both.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we'll see a mixture of people that are like healthy and just want to train,
Okay.
right? And then we'll see people that are hurt or
Mm,
are in pain, or are again have had a serious surgery, and
sure.
they're working with PT and they're working with me.
Hmm.
So we do see some of those, a lot of those actually.
Yeah.
And I'll get some people that are like, "Oh, I want to wait till I'm done PT to exercise." I don't love that. I think that's one message we have to try to get across to people, and that's just educating them on, hey, you should always be exercising.
Sure. Yeah.
There's always something you can do.
Yeah.
I understand you're in pain. I understand it doesn't feel good, but there's always something you can do in the gym to move, to sweat, to get an exercise session in.
Sure.
So, we'll get some people that, we'll wait till they're out of pain, but again, I don't love that. And then people that just want to come in and get after it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty solid. And so, when it comes to the actual rehab clients, where obviously there's going to be some communication between yourself and like an athletic trainer or sportsman, whatever the case would be, like how's
Mhm.
that, what's that like, that layout look like in terms of like the structure, the hierarchy, and like how communication goes down between you and
Yeah.
other people at the
Yeah,
facility?
yeah, yeah. I think we are always talking about all of our clients all the time. So some of the older clients that we have, like, hey, they're still coming in to work on their lower back pain, so they'll see the PT for some manual, some light mobility, some light movement stuff, right?
Mm,
And then they'll come over right after that, and then they'll start their strengthening or their workout session with me.
sure.
So that's that. A lot of people seem to like that flow
Yeah.
of their PT exercise session combo hybrid type of workout.
Yeah.
And myself and the PTs we're always talking, and we always are. We all understand each other's lane, but we
Right.
always stay in our lane, right? So understand, like, I can see what they're doing in therapy. We're all
Right.
in the same build. It's a big open rectangle, so there's no hidden rooms or
That
none of that.
helps.
We're all in the same spot seeing each other work.
Right.
So the PTs are seeing me work. I'm seeing the PTs work. We're communicating like, all right, Rob, this guy's ready for you. Like, all right, let's get going. Like, how you feeling today? Like, PT will come over. Oh, we worked on this and that. Great. All right, let's continue. Let's go through our workout. So
Yeah.
there's just a constant flow and visuals. I can see what they're doing, and we communicate as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so when it comes to sort of, I mean, obviously, like any successfully run facility, there's going to be some things that you guys are constantly assessing to try to figure out, like, we need to do this better. Like, we want to do this better, right? What are some of the things that you guys think you do really well? And some of the things that you personally, maybe not for your facility in particular, but just what you would think and imagine for somebody who is trying to run a model similar to yours that they would need to really focus in on, that you've seen some shortcomings with, that you would want to continue to like try to bring up as far as like a target area, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I'm gonna answer the part that we need to improve upon
Okay.
first. I think the area that we have to improve upon is like this. I guess is more of like a goal of mine. Is like someone calls in. This is partly insurance issues. Like someone calls in and say, "Hi, I'm shoulder pain. I got referred from a doctor to see you for shoulder pain."
Yeah.
You know, well, okay, we'll go through insurance, go schedule your eval, start your therapy. I almost want to see a model where it's like, "Hi, I'm here for shoulder pain." You know, okay, great. You're going to see your therapist and your strength coach and trainer at the same time on the same day. And those two people are going to work together to craft a plan for you to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I like that.
I think more of the hybrid model where you're seeing someone at the same time on the same day is something that I think we have to do a little better job of. Part of that is hard because of insurance.
Sure.
So we have to battle that a little bit, but I think that's one thing we have to work on and continue to figure out a best way to make that happen.
Yeah.
And then one thing we do really well together is I think the like post-surgical patients, like we have like 3 or 4 ACLs, and they come in for therapy, and as soon as they feel comfortable to exercise, that could be 3 weeks, 2 weeks. We're doing upper body. So they're coming in for therapy, coming right over me right after and doing some upper body.
Sure.
And then when the PT gets a good baseline of some strengthening activities for them, I'll take over the lower body programming. PT will continue some plyometric, return to running, jumping, type of activity. So I think that coordination of care is we do a really good job of.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds great. It sounds like that sounds like something where like when you guys finally see all that come together, you'd be like, all right, I can go to bed at night, look myself in the mirror. I'm feeling like pretty dang good about what we got going on here. Yeah. One question I was thinking of is, so to go back to what you said, you kind of wanted to work on, right? You see like your PT and your strength coach, maybe your athletic trainer, kind of like all together, right? And I'm wondering what you think, because I think I have in mind like what that would feel like for a client and like the positivity that can come from it. But what do you think the client would be thinking, right? If that's their first interaction, where it's like, hey, immediately the first like sort of exposure and their first experience with you guys is like seeing Rob, seeing the PT, right? You're seeing all these people and they're just genuinely just caring about you, right? Like, what do you think that the client would be feeling? Because I'm assuming that's what you're going for, right? Is like what you can actually provide to these people in terms of feel right off the bat. So yeah, what do you kind of envision them being able to feel in that moment?
I envision the client feeling comfortable. I envision them feeling like they're in the right place for their needs.
Right.
I envision the client having the utmost trust in myself and the therapist to help them reach their goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I envision. And I think that'll also help crack some of the like stigmas of strength and conditioning coaches, of trainers, where people have, you tell like someone you don't know what you do and they have no idea what the heck you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. They're like, cool, what the heck is that?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think this will help. Just like I can get in front of more people to help educate them on proper fitness and exercise training or strength and conditioning.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I feel like I still get that, and I'm probably gonna get that for a little while. Right? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna strength and conditioning. Then now they made it worse because there's so many terms now. So you're kind of like,
I know.
which one do I go with today? Right?
Yeah.
Personal trainer, sport performance, physical prep.
Yep.
I don't know. Whatever. But
Yep.
yeah. I agree. Like I think so. Like when I was working in collegiate sports, that was something that I thought would be super valuable. Like when I'd hold some sessions, I'd be like, all right, maybe we're doing something that's like revolving around some sort of like movement skill, whatever the case is, right? And I remember working with women's lac specifically when I was at UConn, and I was like, "Hey, it would be helpful if we had some of the assistant coaches here because we're getting into a point in in their phases. Obviously, we're really starting to work on some specialized movement that requires like actual competition movements that are going to be taking place on the field. So why not have me out there and you guys out there, right? Like we're coaching these because we're all coaching movement at the end of the day. And what do you think that all the women on the team are going to think? They're going to be like, well, I see my strength coach out on the field coaching us at the same time as I see my sport coach out on the field coaching us up, and our athletic trainers over there. And she has an understanding of like what's going on with everybody who's not able to perform at a really high level right now, and in terms of like their health. So like she's doing variations of what we're able to, and they're probably like my thoughts would be like they'd be sitting there thinking, wow, I got a good operation going on here. Like there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of cohesion, right? So like I trust this feels right. So that's what I was thinking when I'm thinking like hey, you get that client right off the bat, they're probably thinking like, all right, I'm in good hands. Like I'm at least in a place where people are like have a consensus and they care, right?
Correct.
Yeah, which is
Correct.
fantastic.
And it's different. And it's different.
Mm.
Again, I think this is I think this is a new almost job market for potential trainers and strength coaches to work in is these combo facilities. And
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So without, I want to again be respectful of your time, but I do have some questions on the research you did with the long distance stuff with pitchers and baseball. So
stuff,
yeah. So if you kind of want to you could just talk about that a little bit and some of the
Yep.
your findings, some of the major takeaways or whatever.
Yeah.
And if I have any questions, but I do think I'm just imagining any listener being like, is he not going to ask about that because it sounds like fantastic stuff. So yeah, I mean, just let it fly, and anything I pick up on, I'll obviously just write some questions down. Yeah.
Baseball conditioning. The quick and dirty in my research, there was no significant difference between the modes of conditioning.
Okay.
Which is good, right? Which means we can do whatever we think we need to do to help the athlete in front of us. Okay. But when I look at developing conditioning for baseball players, right? Obviously, the sport is one of the fastest motions in all sports, starting baseball. So you better train the body to move fast, right? That includes sprints, jumps, med ball things, any dynamic effort work, right? All of that's really important to train that anaerobic type of move fast conditioning.
Sure.
Right? The other side of the conditioning for baseball that kind of takes a bad rap is like the long distance running or the poles.
Sure.
I think that is was done traditionally to like flush runs and after you pitch, let's go for a pole run. I think the idea of just moving around after you're sore is the right idea, but I feel like just running isn't the best way to get that accomplished.
Sure.
Right? At the end of the day, we're just trying to recover this person and bring them back to their baseline so they can perform at a high level.
Right.
So, how I like to do that is almost like a recovery circuit. It's essentially like, let me back up. If you're training the aerobic system, right, which is just your moderate intensity, RPE 5 to 6, 120 to 135, heart rate, 45 to 60 minutes in length. That's the type of aerobic training that I would do for some players early off season. And how I do that is 8 to 10 exercises ranging in intensities, and each exercise is accomplishing a task, whether it's improving hip internal rotation, shoulder internal rotation, hip mobility, ankle mobility, right? We can throw in hip and shoulder range of motion exercises to provide them variability to do different things. We can add in some sprints, some low-level plyometrics, right? Med ball tosses, things to get them to move a little bit and sweat a little bit.
Yeah.
So that aerobic circuit if we're in season and we're cutting that down as a recovery workout instead of pulls, you do something like that for 10 to 15 minutes.
Mm.
And they're going to feel really darn good after that.
Sure.
A lot better than them just running, right? So you see all the things that we get accomplished in that 15 minutes compared to just running, which only accomplishes heart rate at a certain range, RP at a certain range, and you're working the legs through reciprocation. Like that's all we're getting. Those are all the biomechanical and physiological adaptations that we're receiving.
Sure.
So, I think you have to monitor resting heart rate for players. Even though baseball, again, is a very power-based sport, if your resting heart rate is high, 70 range, 75, you have to play every day. So, yeah, albeit your sport doesn't require a high aerobic system, you still have to have a good functioning aerobic system to help your body recover from game to game to game to game to game to game.
Sure.
Because you play a lot of games.
Sure.
So that's where the importance of an aerobic system comes into play, so that you can recover well and then produce high intensity bouts of pitching, throwing, or hitting.
Sure.
So that's the quick and dirty on some baseball conditioning for you.
Yeah.
Early off season, do some aerobic training, progress right to just moving fast, anaerobic based sprints, jumps, med ball, dynamic effort work.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like that. I specifically like the 10 to 15 minutes in season 2, because obviously it's like, I mean, you got to imagine that probably totally shakes up anybody who's listening to this podcast. And from what, like you said, the typical, same thing when I was playing high school ball, was like, all right, yeah, you just pitched yesterday, go run your polls today or whatever. We'll see you in 3 to 4 days kind of thing. Right. So, right. But I think specifically touching on the qualities of what was just used, right. It's like anything else, really. It's really, it's not like anything crazy if you think about it, right. It's like, all right, what did we just use? Right. And okay, well, let's try to use the same things that we just used, that caused the stressor to provide some sort of recovery as well. I think is a really good concept, kind of a rule of thumb. I forget where I started using that, but I always kind of thought that was a good general rule of thumb. It's like, okay, well, if we're gonna if we receive some stress for all these places yesterday, let's try to provide some recovery to those same places today. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I really like that a lot. I think that's a different perspective too, for sure. And I guess we're coming up on time a little bit here, but I do want to give you the opportunity, if you have anything that you would like to kind of express in terms of just your views on anything regarding strength and conditioning, the field you're in now, the work that you're doing now, any message you have for anybody who's obviously listening to this podcast, whether it be young or old or anything like that. I always want to give you the opportunity to have the floor and be able to just kind of anything that I'm sure there's probably some things you thought about before you got on the podcast, but anything.
I think this is always, I love saying this, this is one thing I I go by this every day. Athletes don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Sure.
Right? So just none of my clients care or know that I teach or have a master's degree or have done research or I've worked with X number of pro athletes. No one cares about that.
Yeah.
They only care about that you care about them.
Right.
So I think that's something that's important. And then just be the best part of your client's day.
Yeah.
You only see them an hour. Make that hour I always give this example. When you go to Disney World, you're happy.
Yeah.
You're something special. You feel really good. When you go there and make your clinic, make your gym Disney World.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. That sounds fantastic. Disney World at the gym, no doubt. I like that.
Right? Yeah. Just let that sink in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is good. I like that. I'm gonna have to start using that for sure. But it's good perspective for sure, because I think that's something I think we take for granted sometimes. We think they may not be recognizing, but it's hey, you want them to feel the moment that they had with you, obviously earlier in that day, and be able to carry that with them for the rest of their day. So, yeah, that's awesome. So, last question: are you? I'm assuming you're an Eagles fan. Is that
Go Birds?
I just wanted to hear "Go Birds." That's all. I was hoping you say. I didn't want to say it first. I was just you know what? I just want to hear him say it. But yeah, no, I feel pretty good about this weekend. It should be a fun game.
Yes.
Okay, 100%. And then Phillies, they're gonna run it back, or what are we gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, they got the best shortstop in the game now. So
yeah, I like that kid. Yeah,
that's a major upgrade. Trey Turner's gonna be really good for them, man.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, they got a good team, good pitching.
I was devastated, man.
Guys that swing the bats. Oh, that was tough.
That was
That
brutal.
was tough.
Brutal. I mean, it just for so many reasons, mostly because of the fact that they were just easily the most fun team to watch in the playoffs, and I was like, I just want this fun to
Yeah,
come to completion in the right way,
I
kind of
know.
thing. You know what I mean? But, and
The
just because it's the
Astros,
Astros.
the Astros are a good team, man. I mean, you
Yeah.
got tip your cap to them, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll see how next year goes.
Yeah. No, it'll be fun. Well, listeners, we'll catch you guys next time. Rob, thank you again. Appreciate it.